Dear friends, grace, mercy, and peace be with you on this All Saints Sunday. Amen. Grief has a powerful effect on us. It stings and stirs in more ways than one. We respond to grief with aching sadness. My mom died just over 7 years ago. I can't believe it's been that long. She was only 74 when she died. I imagine her kind, sweet face virtually every single day. Most of the time it brings a smile to my face and gratitude. But there are times when I miss her so much that it's like being kicked in the gut. And I can remember the first couple years after she died, whenever I saw my dad alone, without his constant companion, it was heartbreaking, the most painful thing of all. We all have similar stories to tell. It seems strange that Jesus weeps in this story. Many have wondered why. Why would Jesus weep when prior to this part of the story, if we go to what happens before, he is in no hurry to get to Bethany, even though he knows his friend has died. He takes it lightly, it seems. Or why does he cry if he knows that he is going to bring Lazarus back to life? According to Debbie Thomas, when Jesus weeps, he legitimizes human grief. When Jesus cries, he assures Mary not only that her beloved brother is worth crying for, but also that she is worth crying with. Through his tears, Jesus calls us into the holy vocation of empathy. On this All Saints' Day, we sit with one another, knowing that all of us have experienced grief and loss, and that we can handle it better in the context of community than in isolation. So we gather in this sanctuary, or we gather at the river, or at the gravesite, or at the table to celebrate the community of all the saints, the great multitude of witnesses who never leave us. Yes, grief creates emptiness in us. Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the Lutheran theologian who was executed at the end of World War II for his opposition to Hitler and the Jewish Holocaust, Bonhoeffer says this about grief: there is nothing that can replace the absence of someone dear to us, and one should not even attempt to do so. For to the extent the emptiness truly remains unfilled, one remains connected to the other person through it. It is wrong to say that God fills the emptiness. God in no way fills it, but much more leaves it precisely unfilled, and thus helps us preserve, even in pain, the authentic relationship. Furthermore, Bonhoeffer writes, the more beautiful and full the remembrances, the more difficult the separation. But gratitude transforms the torment of memory into silent joy. One bears what was lovely in the past not as a thorn, but as a precious gift deep within, a hidden treasure of which one can always be certain. My hope is that we can all be on a journey to that place. And on this All Saints Sunday, we acknowledge the emptiness, and we hear the promise that we, together, all of us are held in God's abiding presence as a part of the community of saints. We also respond to grief with anger and disillusionment. We grieve the slaughter of our Jewish siblings just over a week ago, the ongoing destruction of black bodies, the demonization of refugees and brown-skinned people, and the constant threat borne by our LGBTQ+ sisters and brothers. We grieve the suffering and death in eastern Syria, Yemen, Nigeria, and the ethnic cleansing of the Rohingya people. We grieve those who have died. We grieve those most vulnerable. and we grieve our own powerlessness, death is more at hand than we wish to admit sometimes. I acknowledge that grief for those who suffer from preventable violence does not bring me as much sadness as anger. It can lead to paralysis and powerlessness. I think we have to be honest about this. We have a tradition of lament, of expressing our grief and anger openly and honestly, but we don't always do this so well. Some cultures are better at it than others. But lament may keep grief from defeating us. We understand how Mary feels when she cries out to Jesus, "If you had been here, my brother would not have died." If only are the words of grief. If only. Finally, we respond to grief with hope. Hope for resurrection and new life. Again, Debbie Thomas writes, when Jesus weeps, he shows us that sorrow is a powerful catalyst for change. In the story of Lazarus, it is shared lament that leads to transformation. What breaks our hearts? What splits us open in sorrow? What enrages us to the point of breakdown? Can we mobilize into those very spaces? Can we work for transformation in our places of devastation? Can our sorrow lead to justice? So we remember and give thanks for the lives lost, just like we do with our beloved. But that's not all we do. It's not enough. We honor the memory of those who have died by addressing the cause of their death. We race for the cure. We organize for peace. We recognize the sacrifice saints have made in the ongoing struggle for justice, and we join them in their efforts. We are moved to hear of Matthew Shepard's interment at the National Cathedral just over a week ago. Bishop Mary Ann Buddy spoke at the service. She said, when people pass by, they will see a plaque in his honor. They will see that this is a church that has learned from the example of violence, that we need to stand and be counted as among those who work for justice and the full embrace of all God's children. Those we love, those who have gone before us and remain near to us in the communion of saints. We give thanks for their presence, and we share their names silently and aloud in a few moments. My dear friends, may God's peace surround you in your sacred memory of all you love, those among you and those who have died. Amen.